Welcome to Beyond the Call, where history, leadership, and heroism come alive. Today's story explores Private First Class Harold Gonsalves at Okinawa in 1945, a powerful account of courage and responsibility in combat. If you enjoy learning more about military history and extraordinary individuals, you can find more articles, podcasts, and resources at trackpads.com. Our story opens on a steep hillside that overlooks the sea. Before we continue, I want to mention the Medal of Honor book series that accompanies this work. These books tell the stories of America's Medal of Honor recipients in a serious, readable, and historically grounded format, with each volume focused on a specific campaign, battle, or part of the war. They are available in color paperback, Kindle ebook, and matching audiobook editions. You can find them at militaryauthor.me. It is April 1945 on the Motobu Peninsula in the northern part of Okinawa. The Marines of the 6th Marine Division are climbing into a maze of coral ridges, tangled brush, and hidden caves that shelters a determined Japanese defense. Mortars thump in the distance, then walk closer until the blasts kick loose stone from the slope. Rifle fire cracks from dark openings in the rock where defenders have dug in and wait for a target to show. In the middle of this fire-swept ground, a small forward observation team moves carefully from cover to cover, searching for the enemy positions that must be brought under artillery fire. Among them is Private First Class Harold Gonsalves, serving as the acting scout sergeant for the team. His job is simple to describe and very hard to do. He helps find safe routes to vantage points where the artillery officer can see the battlefield clearly enough to direct the guns behind them. Each time he rises to guide the others, he risks drawing the attention of unseen riflemen on the ridge above. Beyond the Call is the Monday feature of Dispatch, U.S. Military History magazine. The young Marine who now crawls up that hillside began life in very different surroundings. Harold was born in 1926 in Alameda, California, in a Portuguese-American family that knew the value of hard work and close community. His parents worked long hours to keep the household steady during difficult years, and he and his sister grew up in a neighborhood where people noticed who was willing to help and who could be trusted. At Alameda High School, he threw himself into sports, from football and basketball to track, and also sang tenor in the Glee Club. That mix of teamwork, performance, and effort helped shape the person his friends and teachers saw each day. Like many teenagers in wartime, he did not finish high school. After 2.5 years, he left the classroom to work as a stock clerk at a Montgomery Ward store in nearby Oakland, adding his paycheck to the family income. He pushed carts, stacked shelves, and learned the patient rhythms of retail work, while news of battles overseas filled the radio. The war was no longer a distant story for someone his age. It was a call that grew louder with each passing month. In time, that call drew him out of the store and into uniform. Harold enlisted in the United States Marine Corps Reserve, trading the rows of merchandise for barracks, drill fields, and firing ranges. He became part of Battery L of the 4th Battalion, 15th Marines, the artillery regiment of the new 6th Marine Division. Training was demanding and focused on amphibious operations, where artillery units had to come ashore quickly and support infantry that was fighting in broken and unfamiliar terrain. Over months of exercises and deployments, he became known as a reliable artilleryman who could be trusted in the field. Forward observer teams were the eyes of the artillery. They moved with the infantry, often right behind the lead companies, and watched the ground ahead for the flashes and smoke that revealed enemy guns. Their radios linked the front line to the batteries in the rear that could hammer those positions. Harold's role as acting scout sergeant placed him at the point of that effort, helping his officer find the spots where a few yards of elevation or a gap in the trees could make the difference between guesswork and precise fire. It was a job that rewarded calm judgment and steady nerves. By the spring of 1945, the 6th Marine Division was assigned to clear the Motobu Peninsula and take Mount Yatake, a key Japanese stronghold on Okinawa. The enemy had spent months turning the ridges into a fortress of caves, tunnels, and camouflaged firing points. Infantrymen attacking uphill needed the artillery to knock out those hidden positions, but the guns could do that only if they received accurate reports from the forward observers. This was not a distant bombardment directed from maps. It was a close partnership between Marines under fire at the front and their comrades working the guns behind them. On the 15th of April, Harold's forward observation team accompanied a Marine infantry battalion that was pressing an attack against a particularly strong enemy position near Mount Yatake. The ground rose steeply in front of them and offered few safe places to pause. Mortar shells landed with heavy crashes among rocks and brush, while rifle bullets snapped overhead from cave mouths that were hard to see against the hillside. The team advanced in short rushes, dropping into shallow folds in the ground whenever the fire grew too intense. Each move forward brought them nearer to the enemy and increased the risk they faced. The artillery officer with the team understood that their current vantage points were not enough. To bring the most effective fire onto the caves and bunkers ahead, he needed to see the enemy line from the actual front, not from a safer but limited position. That meant moving closer, into the band of ground, swept by direct fire from rifles and grenades. Harold did not hesitate when the officer decided to advance. He went with him and another Marine, climbing uphill through what would later be described as a slashing barrage of mortar and rifle fire. The three Marines reached a shallow depression near the front where they could see more of the enemy stronghold. Around them, the larger infantry force hugged the ground, waiting for the artillery to break the resistance above. The officer began to study the slope and caves ahead, ready to send back corrections that would walk the shells onto the most dangerous points. It was a tense pause in the middle of chaos. For a brief moment, their attention fixed on the landscape instead of on the immediate ground at their feet. Then a Japanese soldier hurled a grenade that arced down into the small space where the three men were gathered. The grenade landed so close that there was no time to discuss options. There was barely time to move at all. In that instant, Harold made a choice that would define his life and legacy. He threw himself onto the grenade, pressing his body over it to absorb the blast. The explosion killed him almost at once, but his sacrifice shielded the officer and the other Marine from the worst of the fragments and shock. They survived and were able to continue their work on that deadly hillside. The forward observation mission went on, and the artillery they guided helped the infantry keep pressure on the enemy defenses that had seemed almost unbreakable. One young Marine had given everything he had so that the chain of action between front line and rear would not be cut. It was a clear human meaning behind the later words of the citation. The Medal of Honor citation would later describe his conduct as conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. In everyday terms, that sentence means his courage rose far above what could reasonably be demanded of any Marine in battle. Gallantry speaks to the visible bravery of his actions, the fact that others could see his willingness to face danger. Intrepidity points to a deeper resolve, a refusal to let fear or self-preservation govern his final decision. Together, those words named the split second in which he chose to save others instead of himself. The citation also notes that he had repeatedly faced heavy fire in order to help bring accurate artillery on the enemy before that final act. That detail reminds us that sacrifice was not a single event, but a pattern built over many hard minutes of battle. Each time he moved forward with the team or exposed himself to observe the ridgeline, he accepted serious risk so that his fellow Marines might have a better chance to survive. His last decision to cover the grenade was simply the most extreme step in a series of choices that put their safety ahead of his own. It was consistent with the character described by those who knew him before the war. On the tactical level, the effect of his act was direct and immediate. The survival of the forward observer and the 3rd Marine allowed the artillery support to continue at a critical moment in the assault on the Motobu position. That meant more enemy caves suppressed, fewer accurate mortar rounds falling among the assaulting troops, and a better chance for the battalion to gain and hold ground. If the grenade had killed the entire observation group, the attack might have stalled under heavy fire and cost many additional lives. His sacrifice closed off that grim possibility. There was also a powerful effect on morale. Stories like Harold spread quickly through units in combat, retold in short, plain sentences that carried weight. Men heard that a 19-year-old artilleryman had thrown himself on a grenade to save the Marines beside him. Such accounts did not erase fear or fatigue. They did, however, reinforce the belief that they were part of a community where individuals were willing to give everything for one another. That feeling could be as important as any weapon in keeping a unit together under terrible strain. In the years after the war, the United States recognized his valor with the Medal of Honor, presented to his family who had lost a son and brother. The decoration itself was a small object compared to the absence it represented. The Marine Corps and the Navy also carried his name forward, including it among those honored by ship namings and memorials that connect new generations of service members to their predecessors. His story appears in unit histories, on rolls of honor, and in museum displays that tell the story of Okinawa and the Marines who fought there. Each mention is a small doorway back to that hillside on Motobu. Today, when students of military history, veterans, and families encounter his name, they find more than dates and formal phrases. They see a young man from Alameda who loved sports and music, who left school to work, and who chose to enter the Marine Corps during a global war. They follow his path from a department store in Oakland to a forward observer team on a distant island. They learn how he faced a moment that no one wants, and met it with selfless courage. Remembering him in this full and human way keeps the heart of his Medal of Honor story alive.